the dread, the knot in your stomach on a Sunday, like that doesn't have to exist. I used to have it. I don't think people should go through that for their working life. There's so many people who feel that a job is supposed to be something you hate. The Monday morning meetings where it's a big sigh and it's still here. Didn't win the lottery. Is if you won the lottery, you'd leave your job. Well, maybe you should fucking do it then. You know, being able to love Mondays, it's available. I look forward to them. I never, ever, ever dread them. I never get that knot in my stomach on a Sunday anymore. And it means so much to me.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Live Into Your Brilliance, the place where we go on deep explorations to find the experiments that solve everyday challenges and allow us to live the lives we love. Today is like a super cool episode because obviously we've got Billows. Hey, Billows, how's it going?
Good, mate. I'm excited to be here, and I'm super chuffed we have this guest on because he is the puppet master.
He is indeed. Now, for once, I get to welcome a fellow Irishman onto the show. Normally, it's like South Africans like hogging the limelight, but today we're dominated with a bit of Irish. If you're watching, listening, we've got Bren Russell, our producer, the puppet master behind the podcast, on the show, and I'm going to kind of share a little bit about how we came to think this would be a cool idea in just a second. But first of all, Bren, great to have you on this side of the camera.
Yeah, pleasure. I don't feel worthy with all the guests you've had on that I've listened through for 2 years and some incredible stories and insights and learnings that I've taken. So I feel I'm very privileged to be called a guest on the show.
Oh, well, that's awesome. But like, actually, I know from our conversations that you've got as much to offer as any guest that we've had on, and maybe that's just good context for like people wondering, well, why have you got Bren on as a guest? And there's a very simple answer. Myself and Bren were having a production call the other day, just going through like kind of plans for the podcast, and I can't even remember how we got into Bren's world, but I was curious, and Bren dropped this story as to how his career had unfolded and how he got into doing what he was doing. And I was like, oh my days, like we have to have you on the podcast because that is one of the coolest stories I've heard, which talks to lots of what we have been sharing on this show. So maybe Bren, like that, I know we have our question that we always start with, but I think it would be cool just for you to share that story, a little bit about that with the audience so that they can kind of get what I got.
So yeah, I'll try and keep it kind of as brief as possible. But in a nutshell, really, I've been working in radio and media for a number of years, and I'd eventually done various jobs and made my way to the state broadcaster, RTE, which is the equivalent, let's say, of the BBC in Ireland. So Al, you'd of course be familiar, even though it's probably a long time since you've consumed RTE content. So that is really the safest of safe jobs. I don't know if this is the case in anywhere else in the world, but a state job in Ireland means you can actually never lose your job. You're guaranteed a job until you're 65, and they can't involuntarily make anybody redundant. So it is literally the safest job in the world. And I was getting to do audio production, which I, really enjoyed. And I kind of felt like I built my way up there. I'd worked in other smaller radio stations. And I kind of always had this ambition that someday I want to work for myself. And I'd been doing a little bit of side hustling to try and do something to move the needle in some way, no matter how kind of small it might be, to see could I earn a little bit of extra on the side. That was going well. I was able to balance the two of them pretty well, all things considered. And then my wife fell pregnant, and obviously knew my priorities then would have to change. And I guess a long story short, my child was born, and I was on 2 weeks leave, and about a week into it, I don't know what it was, but something shouted at me to say, leave your job, go and work for yourself. And I remember pretty clearly my wife downstairs were trying to get to grips with new baby life. And I walked in and she was sitting on the floor changing a nappy or something. And she looked up at me and said, "What's wrong?" And I just said, "I just need to leave my job. I'm gonna hand in my notice tomorrow, a week into my leave." Before I wasn't even gonna go back and discuss it. The only way that I can describe it is like, I think, I don't know what it was. It was like a really strange urge, which I've had before, to kind of, leave jobs or not go towards things that I didn't feel, that it just, I don't know, something inside me. And again, it's been spoken about so much in the podcast, but you could have sat down like all the most important people in my life in a room, and they could have argued the case of why this wasn't a good idea, and I still would have done it. Like, that's how strong it was. And that's the best way I can describe that feeling of like literally nobody will be able to talk me out of this. And since then, like, I've doubled my salary in terms of what I'm earning. And look, we don't want to make everything about money, but I absolutely love my day-to-day working. Literally look forward to every single week, and I've got to meet some amazing people working online, being able to have colleagues that now are across the world, and it's just been the best thing I've ever done.
Like, I'm holding my reaction back because that's your first time to, I think, hear that story in full. So like, I'm curious to like, what's your immediate reaction?
I mean, it's just pure gold, number one, because it's a living example of everything that we try and point to on this podcast, in terms of trusting your wisdom and having faith in that wisdom, and not letting the noisy intellect talk you out of following that wisdom. But what really struck me was you saying, "Oh, this has happened to me before." You've had moments where your wisdom has bubbled up and silenced the noise, and you've had these strong feelings. And I'm curious, did you always act on it, or did you sometimes allow the noise in the head to talk you out of it?
There was probably periods where usually it was that calling was usually to walk away from something. It's usually to walk away from something, be it, jobs that I was unhappy in, didn't feel right. There has been times where I've suffered a little bit in silence and tried to kind of see if things will change. But ultimately, when it came to the crunch, I always felt like, no, I'm going to do what I'm going to do.
And I'm curious, have you felt a deepening of the faith in your wisdom? Is it something that I mean, I know that you listen to our episodes and have done for the last 2 years, so that's a bit of an unfair question, but I'm curious, on your own volition, have you were you aware of something, and have you been curious about it, and have you learned to trust it more?
Yeah, I think I have. I think I didn't think too much about it at the time, about, trying to put almost a description on it, or, the label of an inner wisdom, or things. And I've never really thought about that. Your gut feeling is I guess what you call it. And I always follow my gut feeling. I've learned, I guess, to follow that. I think the more I hear other people, like on this podcast, talk about these things, it does help me think, okay, yeah, just, I don't know. I guess there's more context around it when you can hear other people tell such similar feelings and stories. how I look at it now will be different. How I look at it now is definitely more that it's something that I can think about a lot more, observe a lot more. Whereas previously, I guess I didn't have that context, and obviously conversations like you guys are having have really helped me learn. Whereas before it was just it was just something that I couldn't really explain. I could never explain. I think I can explain it better now than I would have been able even 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's a nice point to ask a version of our question, I guess. Just because I love the fact that you've been on this journey. As you say, you didn't have the context. Now you do. But like, what is it like that you would love to whisper into the ears of the world? Like, what is that you see as like this is what I've come to see about this, or this would be this is the challenge that I think people live with, that I'd love to open their eyes to something. What is that for you?
Well, I think about what values I'd like my kids to live by when they get a bit older, and that's how I like to think of it. And the one thing that I think I really want to instill in them is don't do a job that you don't enjoy. Don't just. There's so many people. I've seen it so much over the years. I'm sure you guys have as well, who feel that a job is supposed to be something you hate. The Monday morning meetings where it's a big sigh and it's still here. Didn't win the lottery. Fridays, see you on Monday, unless I win the lottery. So what you're saying is if you won the lottery, you'd leave your job. Well, maybe you should fucking do it then. And the notion that you can't do something or at least try to do something or figure out something that that lights you up in some way is crazy, because the amount of time that we spend working. And look, I've done jobs that I've not enjoyed. I've gone through shit stuff, but I think that's been part of it as well. It is. I'm not saying from the age of 18 you should decide you want to do this and then follow that dream forevermore and never go and work somewhere different. I think chopping and changing is something that I've always lived by. Changing your mind is another big one. Like, you can change your mind as many times as you want. If you, if I think again, if my kids grow up and they go into a job that maybe they'd studied for, or, it seemed like the path they want to do, and then suddenly they went, I actually don't want to do that anymore. I'd fully support that, So yeah, I think it would be around the notion of your job being something that you shouldn't look forward to. The dread, the knot in your stomach on a Sunday, like, that doesn't have to exist. I used to have it. I used to fucking hate Sundays. I hated them because myself and my wife would talk about this a lot. It would come to like 3:00 on a Sunday afternoon and you just feel it. You feel, fuck. That's a horrible feeling. But I think in some ways, I feel like it was good to go through it. But I don't think people should go through that for their working life, whatever. Your working life is probably, what is it, 45 years? It's going to get longer. That's fucking 5 days a week. No, it's crazy. And I actually think the thing about a lottery is a great question. Like, what would you do if you won the lottery? We used to have that discussion. It's just a fun discussion. Myself and my wife kind of ask each other that, and she'd say, would you stop working? No, I wouldn't stop working, but I'd work for myself. If somebody was to ask me now, would you stop working? No way. No, but I'd probably double down on what I'm doing, and maybe, try and start some other businesses, maybe in helping other people, maybe other freelancers, and maybe investment, maybe. And then I think, well, those are the things maybe I should explore, and I just think that it's a great question. What would you do if you won the lottery? Because that's probably what you should do.
Like, I'd love to pull out that, like, the bit in that I hear is that, like, that question is a great coincidence, because if I've heard you right, what you're saying is, you ask yourself the question, what would you do if you won the lottery? And if someone was to say, well, I'd leave my bloody job because I hate it, then it's like, why don't you do that now?
Yeah.
And if it was like, oh no, I would do X, Y, Z, equally, it's still, well, why do you need the lottery? Because the chances, I think they say that the chances of winning the lottery is you've got a better chance of being struck by lightning twice in your life than you do of winning the lottery.
Mm.
So
That was going to be my next point. Is when you think about the odds, and I used to even going years back. I used, like you said, we'd have the conversation for fun with my wife, and what would you do if you won the lottery? And I would always say to her, your chances of winning the lottery, you've got, what would you do if you won a million in the lottery? Well, actually, your chances of actually going and starting a business and making a million, which isn't a huge amount in business terms, are so much like it's so much more in your favor to just go and make that million than it is for the million to come knocking on your door. Hoping for things to come knocking on your door is another one. And look, again, it's rehashing so many discussions you guys have had, but like things are not going to come knocking on your door. You've got to take action, and that's it's something that has been spoken about so much. Yeah,
but it's scary, right? And I mean, you've heard guests talk about it, and I'm sure, and I'm very curious about your own experience, because there you are, you've got a beautiful baby just come into the world. We've all been, well, certainly Elle and I have been there. I mean, when you've got young kids and you're not sleeping and you're changing pooey nappies and picking up vomit, it's exhausting and it's overwhelming, particularly as a first-time parent. And so, I'm sure there's some listeners who are like, okay, cool, love that, love the idea of listening to the tickle of my soul, listening to my wisdom, or going with my gut feel because I know it feels right. And if I did win the lottery, like that's what I would do. But I've got a young kid, I've got a mortgage, I've got a car payment, I've got all of these responsibilities, I've got a partner who has certain expectations. Like there's a whole prison we create for ourselves, and it's very innocently done. It's not like we're being stupid or we're somehow subjected to a realm of thinking that is a prison of our own making. In some extent, to some extent it is, but I mean, the point is, it's not there's no malice in it, there's no kind of what's the word I'm looking for, it's no it's all well intentioned. But it is often the logic that ignores the tickle, and then we don't do it. And then, and Al has this lovely saying of what's coming for you is going to get you anyway. So eventually it comes round again, and it pops up in a different way, and you're like, oh shit, there it is. Like, but nah, so still. And I'm living proof of that. I mean, we joke on this podcast about my narrative that I carried around for years about the kids' college education, and why I couldn't do certain things or indulge in certain things or what have you. And so I'm really curious about your answer to that, or your experience of that. I'm not suggesting you have the answer, but your experience of that, where you've got this amazing, safe, guaranteed for life job. You've got this kiddo. I'm assuming you had a mortgage, or maybe you were renting. You're overwhelmed as a new parent, but yet you still did it. And I'm sure that's fascinating for the listener.
I think something that really helped massively was the fact that I had started doing it, previous to quitting my job. And a few people have said to me, clients or people I would catch up with, like you guys, kind of regularly, have said that was the clever way to do it, from a business perspective. And I think if somebody was to come to me, which they do from time to time kind of going, I'd love to do what you're doing. I think, and similarly with podcasts, it's such a similar kind of piece of advice is what's the smallest and easiest thing you can do to make a start? And so if you want to work for yourself, or you want to start a business, there's so many opportunities now online to do that, to make a living. You don't start thinking about how I can make 10K a month, if you're currently earning 3K a month. You think about it, and the way I did was, can I just get start doing podcast editing freelance for somebody? But that's literally how I started. My very first job on Upwork was like something crazy, like $6 an hour. I just wanted to start doing it and to see, does this exist? Would somebody pay anything for this? The overwhelm is so real. And I guess as well, I'm pretty lucky that in terms of when I did it, like when I made the decision, I think it'll be very difficult now when I think, with 2 kids, life is pretty full on. If I was in a job, I could just get eaten up by that job and time with kids and family, where you don't even give yourself time to think about what other possibilities might be out there. So it's such a real thing. But like, again, and listening to you guys and to so many other podcasts, it's like there's always that thing, isn't there? No matter what you want to do, there's always the thing that will be the reason that you can't do it or that you're not going to do it. But does it? I don't know. Maybe for some people, for me, it did help to just go, okay, small steps. What's the simplest? What's something really small I can do to take a step in that direction? May be helpful.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, because as you know, we love the concept of practice. Like, it's all good and well talking about this stuff, but like, we really encourage our listeners to go out there and just try things. And it's funny, there's a book that we read, business book, Good to Great, by Jim Collins, and he has this wonderful concept of fire bullets before you fire the cannonball. And I think that's what I heard in your story. There is, you had the courage and the curiosity to fire some bullets. You fired a few bullets and you put yourself out on Upwork, and then you kind of took a few more shots, and then at some point you just had enough confidence or clarity just to fire the cannonball and go, fuck it, like, I know this is going to be a home run, it's going to be a strike, so here we go. And I think the practice of that is such a wonderful thing, because I think people do sometimes get a bit daunted and overwhelmed. They're like, oh shit, I have to do this massive pivot. I have to, throw everything in and then pursue this kind of line. And it's like, no, you get to experiment. You get to go and play in the sandpit and just be curious. And just, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one small step, and just fire a few bullets, see what happens. And then I think what happens is, as you become more confident, and you trust, and your faith in your wisdom deepens, and you learn to turn off the noisy intellect and just operate from that feeling that you described, then I think you just fire cannonballs daily, because you just know you're going to hit a strike, because you know what the feeling is. And but I just love that. I think that's such wonderful practical advice for people. So thank you very much.
I think just one other thing I'll add to it, and I know you guys will totally agree, or actually it's something that I be interested in your take, but it's fucking hard work. It is the other thing as well, is that I think often people are looking for the solution, or what's the thing. And again, I deal with a lot with podcasts. What's the thing I'm missing? You're not missing it, and you're just gotta fucking get your head down. And the times when I come home from my job having edited audio all day, and the last thing I want to do is edit more audio, like there's times where I am now where it's got to a comfortable place. I want to build it more, but it's days when it's so fucking hard, and trying to constantly improve, constantly learn more. I'm always in self-help books, self-help podcasts, and that practice of just constantly trying to be better, trying to kind of take the steps forward is really, really hard. And from the outset, it's hard, but I don't know, something that I've always felt, and I'd be interested in your guys' take on this, is that hard work does always pay off.
Yeah.
In some way. Like, it doesn't mean necessarily you just hard work constantly. And look, I'm a big one for smart work as well. But, constantly hammering it, and you're going to, earn millions. But at some point, I think that work, as long as it comes from a good place, a good intention, and you're doing things kind of for the right reasons and in the right way, does pay off at some point. Like, I spent when I finished college, I spent like 3 or 4 years as a freelancer doing animation, and never financially, nothing really came of it. Like, and I kind of went, well, that was a fucking waste of time. I remember thinking, that's fucking 4 years down the drain. I should have been out there doing work. But as I went into work in different places, then I realized that the things that I kind of, and even a lot of it was work ethic, because I worked so hard at that time. I remember going into certain jobs and going, compared to how hard I used to work and how many hours I used to put in, this is fucking easy. Like, I think it does come back to you in some way that and then I only look back now and go, at that time, and working in some other, even in some shitty places, and go, actually, that was really good for me. But the question of hard work, I think, is an interesting one for me, because I do kind of feel like, as long as you are putting the graft in, and it is hard, I do think if you kind of just stick with it, you will see benefits of some kind.
Like, I am so in with what you've just said, because I think you're pointing at two things. I actually think there's two things in what you said. One is this idea, which is a question I think we've had on here before, which is like, choose your hard. Like hard, easy anyway. I don't even know what really people mean. Sometimes they go like, oh, this is too hard, or it's like, life generally can sometimes be hard. But the bit I hear what you're saying is like, but it's like a double dose of hard if you're then suffering in your job because you don't even really want to be doing the work that you're doing anyway. You kind of going like, I hate this job and it's hard, versus like, people sometimes I think fall into the idea of they want to find the perfect next job or the next thing, which in their minds they think, well, if I found that, it'd be easier. And what I hear you saying is, no, it's not so much that it'd be easier. Like, you still got to work hard. Like, you still got to put your shoulder to the wheel. Like, if you look at the three of us, and I'm not saying that like we're perfect or anything like that, but some people often say to me, how many hours a week do you work? And sometimes I get like really embarrassed. This is a genuine like experience of mine. I get super embarrassed because I go, oh God, like, I don't know. Because in my head, it's like, not very many. And then I go, oh no, actually I do. I do a lot of hours, but it just doesn't compute in my mind as work. And I know that might sound weird, but I'm like, this is part of what I do for a living, is doing this podcast. But I wouldn't count, like, I probably wouldn't count that like my coach, and doesn't. So it's super interesting that when you're kind of go, like, you can be working hard, but you lose sight of hours and things like that. And the bit that I do like really think is that you've also touched on, I've got a question around something else you said in a second, is, work ethic, and nothing comes knocking at your door. And sometimes we talk about, isn't the universe amazing? And I do think it is, but we also say, the universe is kind of, will sit on the side. If you're sat on the sidelines, the universe is going to be like, hey, whenever you're ready, like, we would love to play. But the universe, it's kind of that law of attraction thing where people say, just write a check for £10 million, put it on the the ceiling of your bedroom and stare at it every day. I think the universe just has a right giggle when people do that and go, good luck. We don't play that game. But someone hears like the tickle of their soul or whatever, and then fires a bullet and takes a look. Then I think all sorts of serendipitous things can come into play where you think, oh, wow, like I didn't know this was even on offer. But the bit I wanted to, I guess, it's something that you said, Bren, and actually, Bill, is something you said, which I'd love to kind of put into the room and see what comes of it. You talked about, Bren, about the power of being able to change your mind. And I'd love to come back to that. And Bill, as you said something like, after a while, you just fire cannonballs and it's going to be a strike. And I thought to myself, those two things are interesting to me. Because I'm like, what did you both mean by that? Because I think that there's something in there for me around, what do we mean when we say if you fire a cannonball or follow your wisdom, you'll always have a strike? And where does changing your mind fit in with this? And I don't mind which of you kind of wants to dive into this pool, but I'm curious about where these things fit together.
Well, for me, changing your mind is just something that comes up very often. I think people feel like they can't change their mind, that they can't go down a different route. If you take it back to what would you do if you won the lottery? I know there's tons of people I've worked with. The answer would be I'd probably start a bakery. Or I know some people have said to me, I'd love to run a coffee shop. But what? Because you work in broadcasting, you can't go and run a coffee shop, or you can't open a bakery, or because you work in finance. Like I think, but people think that way. They think, well, I've got the finance job now, so that's my job. That's what I can do. But what I really love to do is open a bakery. And I see it in smaller things as well. And, even young people. I mean, I think young people are expected to know what they want to do when they're too young, in my opinion. I fell into this. I decided to do media on a whim. And look, it's kind of, I've made my way in it. But if you go into something, a job, a university course, whatever it might be, and you feel that's not for you, I think, and I've done it, too many people just suffer in silence because they think, well, I've built my foundation now. I have to build the rest. I don't think you do. I think there's nothing wrong with, a good friend of mine, he's changed his job multiple times in the last few years. He gives himself a terrible time over it. It's like, there's no rules. You can, you can change your job as many. He's I'm trying to find what I like. I said, that's great. Nobody else does that. Everybody else just sits where they are and kind of goes, well, this is my job. So I think that was a big thing for me in terms of, I think it's a big thing to even just tell yourself, I can change my mind as many times as I want. And I think it goes for anything, relationships, career, whatever, what you're studying. And I think everybody around you and everybody around you will be better for it if you decide to change your mind, if that's what you want to do, rather than just, I think too many people just, they go into something and feel that that's what they have to be in.
Bill, as you dive in, and then I'll.
Yeah, no. Yeah. So my comment about just firing more and more cannonballs with more and more confidence is it's not so much that it's not so much that you it's going to be a strike, because a strike could be a miss and still be a strike because of what you see. And so what I meant by that comment was you don't live in fear anymore. You almost have this kind of fearless delight in just launching big things and seeing what happens, like selling your house and downsizing to a seaside village because that's what you've always wanted to do, or going to live in a remote part of the woods because it's been a tickle of your soul. And you're like, oh, it didn't work a couple of months. So yeah, I'll go do something else, And I often think of our friend Christy, like just on a daily basis, firing cannonballs, just dragging her airstream behind her and just going where the wind blows and having zero fear, worry, and trusting that her wisdom, when she gets to a fork in the road, something says, don't go left, go right. She's like, cool. I don't know where this is going, but I'm going to fire the cannonball, and off I go and into the next adventure. And so I think I think, what you were saying is like changing your mind is just, I think, a wonderful part of being human, number one. And it, we are naturally curious beings. And I think a lot of the depression and the mental health is because people, they do feel stuck, exactly as you say. I mean, the statistics are there. I mean, it's horrifying. Giving yourself permission to chop and change and experiment and fire bullets, fire cannonballs, is part of, I think, realizing that you are free, and that, and yeah, you can't be reckless. You
Mhm.
can't abandon your
There's always a
1-week-old baby and wife and say, sorry, I'm following the tickles of my soul. I'm going off to do whatever. But within the realms of what is right and what feels right, there's endless opportunity,
Mm.
endless scope for creativity. And what's the famous thing? If at first you don't succeed, try something else. It's like, get stuck in, get busy doing. And we often say this on this podcast, like the greatest cure for fear is action. You can be paralyzed and be in a shitty job and feel like you're in a dead end. Get off your ass and go and do something about it. Whether that's firing a bullet or firing a cannonball, you won't regret it because you'll see exactly what you meant to see. But sitting on your ass, to Al's point, and expecting the universe to suddenly deliver a 10 million pound check is, that's a fool's errand.
I think as well, similarly, doing once and expecting results, whatever results you have in your head. And again, I deal with this a lot with podcasts, that people think, well, I just have to do. First of all, let me just say this: the vast majority of people I speak to about podcasts don't actually release one episode. Majority. And this, again, just an interesting point in terms of doing. So what I'm actually saying to people now is, forget about your equipment, forget about, all those nuts and bolts. And the first thing you need to do for me is go and record 3 episodes. Don't care about your equipment, don't care about, just go and do it. And most people don't. And I think similarly, there's something in the air that people think, well, I just have to do the thing and then I get the result. Let's say, well, once I start doing a podcast, well, then, monetization, they're thinking about straight away. And again, I think it comes back to a lot of what's been discussed on this podcast, that I think doing is important, but without expectations. And again, that hard work thing comes into it. You got to be willing to do that hard work to make it go somewhere. I don't know where that place is, but without those things, things just never seem to work either. Too many times people think there's a silver bullet, or I just need to figure out what the thing is. And I think more often than not, it's not the thing. It's doing consistently over a long period of time.
I agree with that.
Like, I started investing in stocks like 3 years ago, just because I thought I was kind of interested. I'd heard some stuff on podcasts, and I think there's so much learnings in life from the stock market, because I've been doing it for 3 years with just a little bit each month. Again, no expectations, wasn't expecting to come away a millionaire. It was only now after 3 years I can look back and go, oh, okay, 80% profit, not bad, but that's just compound effect. Within that time, there's been times when it's been negative. There's times when it might be 80 now and the portfolio will drop down to 60, 30. You don't know. Like, you don't know where it's going to go. But actually and this is what the experts in the space would say, is it dollar cost averaging is just going a little bit each month, a little bit. And then you can look back and go, oh, wow. And I think life has a similar compound effect in that if you just put in consistent levels of effort over time, you will be able to, you can look back and go, wow, I see the difference. There's so many other life lessons, weirdly, in the stock market. Diversify is number one rule. And I think that's a big thing as well, that if you're in a job, that's the furthest away from diversifying. If you're relying on one boss, one CEO, one manager from saying, actually we have too much staff, who are we going to make redundant? Or you're relying on your boss not being a dickhead. Such a massive part of your life is basically controlled by who you work for, because you feel like everything is impacted by that. But if you were to diversify, and that's what I love about freelancing as well, is like, rather than having one boss, one job, I have like 30, and sometimes I get made redundant. Sometimes I walk away. But I think for somebody who might be in a job, and I'm not saying like everybody should go freelance, it's not for everybody, but I do think being able to diversify your talents in some way is really an interesting one. Don't know, maybe I've gone completely off topic.
No, I think that's such a wonderful analogy. I love that analogy.
And actually, I was listening to a podcast recently on the School of Greatness, which is an amazing podcast. And there was a stock market guy, and he was like, this is the biggest life hack that exists, putting your money in stocks. And it makes sense. Like, your stocks will grow over time, and your cash in the bank will basically depreciate because of inflation. But he said, like, what is the stock market when you think about it? It is a representation of human work. Like, all the biggest businesses in the world that have been built by humans exist on the stock market. So you're investing your money into everything that humans have created. And over time, generally speaking, that just gets bigger and bigger and better and better. So it's a weird thing that I've come to think about it so often, that I can just keep thinking back to the stock market in terms of, like, I might start a new project and maybe it's not going so well. Well, just keep at it, little bit each month. Don't give up, thinking that, fuck, this is shit, it's dropped by 20%. What would happen if you just stick with it a little bit longer? And even if that's not putting all your money into it, just bits of money, bits of your effort. Yeah. It's a weird one, but I think it's a really interesting one.
I don't think it's weird at all. Well, like what Billo said, I'm so glad I asked you about that question. I'll tell you why, because like actually what you got into, and Bren, something you said before, I think it was about your friend who's like moved jobs and stuff. And then you went, there are no fucking rules. I don't think we really, really, really know that sometimes. There are no rules. You can do whatever you want. You can actually do whatever you want.
And I think it's even more relevant now, today, 2025, yes, than it was. And again, I'm sure there was a guest who spoke about this. Oh, yeah, sure. I only edited it last week, I think.
It was Jill.
It's coming up. Yeah. Yeah, I think it goes back as well. I think what's really common in that one is looking over and seeing what other people are doing. What are your friends doing? Well, they all have steady jobs, or they all do this, and they're all married, so I should be married. And I think there's a lot of that goes on, that we've created, imaginary rules for everything. But when I think just about work, because it's probably the most relevant one, that thing of like, well, have to stay in my job.
Yeah, I have to stay in my job. Or if I make the change, and this is where, Billows, your point about like you become more confident and fearless and firing the cannonballs felt so important to me when you said a miss is as good as a strike type thing. Because actually they're both part of the unfolding, and it's living your life from that place rather than it's living your life from that place of joy rather than thinking that there's a place of joy to be found on the other side of something else. And I think that is so crucial. It's like what you said right at the beginning, Bren, about, your kids, and, myself and Billow's kids are slightly older than yours, but still the same thing, I think the rules that sound, as it sounds to me, is this: like, A, if you get a good job, you should stick with that job for as long as you can. Well, it's closely followed by another rule, which is if you're going to change, you really need to be confident that that one is going to work out.
Mm.
And so that, I think, is what holds people back is, well, the perceived wisdom of society is if you get a good job, keep it. But if you're going to change, be sure that it's going to work.
Mm.
And then everyone wants to evaluate you against your decision versus like, well, it works. The it's working is, did it feel right? Yeah. Like, did it work out? Who cares? Like, some things will work out and some things won't. But you'll, to Billows, to your point, you get to the next crossroads and you'll know what to do. And I just think we underestimate that. We underestimate our, it's not resilience, but it might look like resilience. We underestimate just how much our innate wisdom is part of our resilience. That, like, there's going to be a future you that's got your back. And I particularly love this idea because, I am 47. So there have been, like, if you were to do 47 times 365, there have been that many different iterations of me, if you think about up until today. And every one of those versions of me has performed their job perfectly to get me to here. Like, I mean, perfectly to get me to here. And my only job is to play this day. Because for as long as I am on this earth, there will be more and more versions of me. And no matter what shows up, that version of me will be there and will handle it just exactly how they're meant to. It's not my job to try and keep them safe. They're like, if I always think if future self could come back to just whisper in my ear, it'd be like, fucking go for it. I've got you. So that's when I hear, there's no rules. You can change your mind. You can fire the cannonballs, all in service of like living your life from that place of, I don't know what you'd call that, Bren, what you said at the beginning, like what you'd love to teach your kids. I'd love to hear, what age are your kids now?
3 and 6 months.
So your 3-year-old's going to be chatting away, I'm sure, probably nonstop.
Mm-hmm.
But when they're old enough, what would you say to them? Like, how would you articulate it? Just if you were to say, hey, like, here's my nugget of life advice that I want you to know. How would you anchor it home for them?
In a simple sentence, I would say it would be, as long as you do your best, I don't really care. Like, not that I don't care, but as long as you do your best. Like, and I think of kids in school and they stress over what's the leaving cert in Ireland. The one exam that, apparently determines your whole life because you need a certain amount of points to get into the course you want, to get into the career you want. That's imagined anyway, because there's other avenues. But like, when I think about when he gets to that age, as long as you're doing your best, again, as long as you're doing your best, I'm not saying, oh, fuck it, like, because it doesn't matter. And, so I don't need to study or I don't need to do whatever. But as long as you're doing the best for what is you is the best. I think you usually feel what your best is. Like I would often say to myself when I'm going through challenging times, let's say business drops off, I can't start to tell myself, well, this is fucked. The whole thing's fucked. I'm going to have to go back to a job. But like, that's not true, first of all. But then second of all, I just keep reminding myself, well, like you're doing your best. It's challenging, to work for yourself, to support your family, have the 2 young kids. It's all really challenging. But again, what I keep trying to say to myself is, well, like, are you doing your best? Yeah. What else can you do? And I think that's something that, you can change your mind. So I guess it's that you're always doing your best. And then within that, there's always options. And I think I'd like them to, again, to know that careers, I think, is a big one. The amount of time you're going to spend on a career is that you aspire to work something that you enjoy, whatever that might be. It's different for everybody.
And Bren, just then, so pulling that one step further, so moving it off like your kids, but now imagine there's someone listening to or watching this episode, and they're like thinking, "Fuck, I am actually in a job that I don't love." Like, if this is resonating, what would you say to them? Is like, "Hey, here's the experiment. Like, this is what would you love for them to do next? What's the experiment that you would say to run?"
I think it's probably going back to what I mentioned earlier, that like, what's the smallest step you can take? I think things that have helped me would be to notice the things that I'm saying to myself. And I still say mad stuff to myself, sometimes out loud as well. Crazy stuff. I think another thing I've tried to practice is, as much as I can, cut out kind of negative media and what would you say, media consumption, I guess. I think it's been really helpful to me. I think if you were to watch the news for 15 minutes every day, you fucking would hate life. I think stop, trying to compare yourself to other people is another one. And start small. And that could be the smallest thing in the world. Really could. What's one small step you could take? So there might be, there's the figuring out, maybe there's the figuring out of what's your passion or what's really inside you. That's maybe one thing you need to find. But then if you know what it is that you'd really love to do, I think let's go back to that question again. Ask yourself, what would you do if you won the lottery? What would you do if you won like 10 million in the lottery? I don't think many people would say, well, I just put my feet up. I really don't.
No, I agree with that.
And if they did, they get bored of that really quickly. So
a lot of coffee shops would be opened.
Be no shortage of bread, cake, or coffee.
Yeah,
coffee.
So no, I think that answer was a little bit all over the place, but luckily I'm the editor, so I can cut it down.
But I have to share this with you guys because I think it's so kind of lovely and it kind of speaks to what we've been chatting about here. So my youngest daughter, Maddie, goes to university in Colorado, and she's in her final year. And she came to me last summer, and she was like, "Hey, I need to get an internship." And this is one thing that just does my head in. And look, I've got nothing against kids who, young adults who bust a gut and get internships, and some of them I think are really super chuffed and they land in an awesome internship and it gives them a real sense of direction. It helps them point their compass. But there's this obsession in America in particular with internships. I don't know what it's like in Europe. And I said to her, baby, you're only 20, 21 once. Like, why farting around? Why do you want to fart around the whole summer with an internship? Like, just go work in the pub like you always do, make a ton of cash, go to the Cape, go to the beach, visit your friends, like have fun. Like, just be a young person. Like, fucking work will get you eventually. And she was like, no, she was quite insistent. So I said to her, I said, okay, cool. I said, my only advice is if you want to do an internship, do it in something fun and meaningful. Don't go and, unless you really want to work for Accenture or Deloitte or one of those places, like go and do something fun and meaningful. Anyway, through various connections and opportunities, which we're very lucky with, she got this amazing internship with this really innovative company that is pioneering period products for women and putting pads on a roll in toilet stalls, in airports, schools, hospitals, you name it, where women, if they have unexpected periods, they can just access these pads on a roll. And it's this amazing entrepreneur, or two entrepreneurs based here in New England, and they've set up this company, and hopefully we'll actually have Penny and Tom on the show because they're awesome people. And so Mad's got a gig with them. They were very kind, but they needed somebody young who understood social media to kind of look at their Instagram and social media ads and kind of just help access their target audience. And so Mads got stuck in, and she really, really had fun. And she was a bit bummed out that it was kind of work from home. She wanted to be in a vibey office. I think in her mind, she was sort of in a cool space with pool table and ping pong table downtown Boston with lots of young people. But that didn't transpire. But to your point, Bren, she just got stuck in. And I was so impressed because she worked in a room upstairs from me here. And she was so diligent, and she just worked and worked and worked. And they loved her so much. They've now asked her if she wants to do some more work for them when she goes back to school. And then as part of that kind of momentum, I then said to her, I said, oh, by the way, there's this really cool company that I know that I'm doing some work with over in London. They have this amazing model where they create these private gym spaces. I said, I think eGirl would be great for them, because obviously they have a lot of women who love these private gym spaces because they don't have men ogling at them in public gyms. And you should chat to Ben over at Solo 60. So she did, and it looks like they will put eGirl into their sites. But what's actually transpired is she now has an opportunity to go, once she graduates, to London and learn that business. And they've said, why don't you come and help us with our marketing and learn the operations? And then when we decide to expand into the US, you can help us with that expansion. And it's just this wonderful kind of snowball that you see unfold because she decided to put her shoulder to the wheel and her nose to the grindstone a bit and just get stuck in. And she had I'm going to call it courage, curiosity, to do something a little unconventional, like go and work for a startup, trying to do good in the world, but no guarantees that they would even be alive 6 months from now. And I take great delight in that because I sit back and I see what she's seeing, and I see this light coming on. And now the Maddie that you speak to today versus the Maddie who you would have spoken to 6 months ago about internships, she will tell you a completely different story. And the advice that she's dispensing to her friends. And now she's actually got 4 of her mates together, and they're like, fuck it, we're all going to go and live in London and work in London once we graduate. And I'm like, yes, that's
Watch
how
out,
you
watch out,
survive.
London.
Yeah, that's how you survive in a fluid world. You go, you give yourself permission to go do different things. And what you fear most never transpires. And if it does transpire, guess what? You were meant to see it. So I thought I'd just share that story because I think it's kind of like, she's drinking from the same fountain you are, Bren.
For sure.
And I love it.
So Bren, like, it's not going to come as a shock to you now because you've produced 110 episodes. So this better be the bloody best bumper sticker for life ever because you've only had 2 years to think of it. But based on what we've just chatted about, what would be your bumper sticker for life and why?
I heart Mondays.
Yeah, baby.
Because I think Mondays get a really bad rap. And it's something that I've thought about so often. Somebody asked me not too long ago, it was just a fun game we were having, random questions. Somebody said, what's the definition of success? And I said, looking forward to Mondays. And they just thought that was a great one. And I look forward to Mondays. Like actually, in fact, it went so far that like I found weekends tough, like because I was so in the zone Monday to Friday. So it's not to say there aren't challenges that will come, and I've had plenty of them. But I genuinely like Monday mornings are amazing. I look forward to them. I never, ever, ever dread them. I never get that knot in my stomach on a Sunday anymore. And it means so much to me because I know what that's like. And I think Mondays get a terrible rap in the working world. And from what I see now, I have no idea why, because I fucking love them.
Bren, you need to, like, that needs to be on the Podland site, which I love, by the way. And I just love the photos of you and your mates and your wife and your baby. But you should have like your swag section, and that should be a t-shirt for sure. The definition, Bren Russell's definition of success.
Yeah.
Fucking look forward to Monday morning.
It's something I want to, I'm thinking about setting up like, I don't know if it's a community or a group or something I can help people with, who are freelancers or, based around, being able to love Mondays. Like it's available. Like there's many people who are evidence that it's available, that you can love your Monday.
Well, Bren, my question is a very simple one now. What is the single smallest step that you can take to move that forward? Because that sounds freaking awesome.
Yeah. Well, I think we spoke about this the last time, and I said I was thinking about setting up, like, even for the producers I know, for like a WhatsApp group for people to just, we're all dealing with similar challenges. So I've done that.
Nice.
Now it's a small group of only 5. So if there's any other freelancers or producers who happen to hear this and want to join, I'm not looking for any money. I just thought, what's the simplest thing is not to look for money, not to try and turn it into business, but like at some point, if it's a business, it'll come. But for now, it's people, freelancers or podcast producers, whatever it might be. And it's been great to just see what people are dealing with. It's always a familiar story, and it can be a lonely job, freelancing. Like, I don't mind it, but I know a lot of people have said that to me before, that they feel it's a lonely job. So the next thing then will be some sort of website, maybe. I do have domains registered. They are based around Mondays or looking forward to Mondays, and I can't remember I bought maybe 2 of them. So yeah, they're the small steps. But yeah, I need to keep taking them.
So, just riffing off that, people listening, watching, whether they're an aspiring, perhaps thinking, oh my God, I would love to launch a podcast, or freelancer wants to get in touch, where do they, Bill has hinted at it there, but like, where's the best place for them to come and check you out and connect with you? And I know you'll pop everything onto the show notes, but just for those people that might just listen and take action straight away?
Yeah, so my website is podlad.com, and that's where you'll find a contact form for anybody who is in a job or career that they're feeling they would love to escape to do freelancing or even something else. I would happily like speak to people on a call for nothing, just jump on, have a chat, and like if there's ways I can help people, I will, because it is something that I'm passionate about, you know, to for more people to see that there's opportunities there that maybe they don't see themselves. So I happily jump on it. You know, I say that to a lot of people and people who want to start podcasts as well. You know, jump on a call, no charge, just chat it out and then see where it might go.
Nice, man. Thank you for
Pleasure.
coming on. It's been like such a cool chat. And I know you were very humble at the beginning about your perspective on your place versus other guests. This has been a cracker. Like, I've loved the conversation. I think, you know, from that time when we chatted, and I was like, oh my God, we have to have you on. And this is why, like, I think, you know, number one, I love working with you. Number two, like, your authenticity in terms of like putting what you say into practice and speaking from the heart is awesome. And I think it comes through in your work. And I think it comes through in the way that you speak. I think it comes through in the way you live your life. And so it's super powerful. And I do hope some people take you up on that offer to kind of come and chat to you, because they won't regret it. And obviously we're just like, because we get the opportunity to thank you on the record for the work you do in making myself and Billows sound better than we are, which is awesome. So, you know, thank you so much for everything you do for this podcast and for coming on today. It's been amazing.
No, likewise. I mean, working with people like you is it's been the cornerstone of my business, and I have weirdly, you know, we say attracted. I don't know if that's the right word, but like so many like cool people, clients, call them clients. A lot of them have become friends. A lot of them have become advisors. Have like magically appeared in my life, and I do think I have a really good instinct for um, who I do choose as clients, because I think it's two-way. You know, I'm not just looking for everybody who might offer me money. It's about, you know, feeling the energy. Big believer in that. And I have like met some amazing people like you guys that are just so good to be connected with. And like, I consider people like you my colleagues now that, you know, I would have had in the office a few years ago. And it's brilliant. And I really want to, you know, do more with the podcast, with this podcast, because I've learned so much from it. I'm determined that we will do that as well.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I was going to say thank you for saying that, and I echo L. Like, thank you so much for the amazing work that you do, and I'm delighted that actually one of our guests who's coming on in a couple of weeks has reached out to you, and hopefully you're going to help him produce an even or equally as awesome series of discussions. But I also wanted to say a massive thank you for telling your story, because I think what listeners love the most is hearing those true life stories and then receiving the little nugget of how to go put that into practice. And I think it is a super inspiring story. It gives it, like, for me personally, it creates that wonderful upwelling in my chest where I'm like, you see what is possible when you follow your wisdom and you do live your dash the way you want to live it. And I think it's super inspiring for people, and it also gives people a lot of courage, because guess what, you know, Bren Russell did it, and he was in this super secure job, and he did it at a time where he just had a baby, and it's made all the difference. And maybe I should fire a few bullets myself. And so thank you for that, because I think that's gold for the listener.
Yeah. I don't know if I articulated very well, in terms of steps. I do think it's different, but again, have a conversation with me or somebody else. If people do feel like that, I think that's a good first step as well. Like, speak it out loud, have a conversation. Because I would do that. I used to do that with my wife a lot. Just kind of say that at some point, I think I'm going to leave this job, and I think I'm going to go work for myself. And it was helpful to, speak that out loud. So if you're somebody who is somewhere and you actually just want to run a bakery, like, speak it with somebody. It just might make it like 10% more real. And if it gives you that feeling, because I used to talk about, working for myself, and it would give me a feeling in my stomach of like excitement, because I knew it could be real. But only by speaking it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you have to speak the future into the world in some ways, and it comes from within. It comes out in our words. Yeah, like just to bring this one to a close, for our listeners and watchers. Again, as always, hope it's been as inspiring for you as it is for myself and Billows to have people like Bren on and kind of hear their stories. I used to say, interestingly, you had to be careful if or when you open Pandora's box, because you didn't know what might happen as a result. And it's interesting. I only remembered that throughout this conversation, how I used to think that and say it to people. And it's funny now, I think the opposite. It's like, if I can throw the lid open on Pandora's box, you don't know what's in there, but that's the joy of living. And I want to bring us all back to that question, Bren, that you asked, which is, as you're leaving here, maybe this evening, ask yourself, when you're sitting with your wife or your partner or friends, like, have some fun with that question. Oh, what would you do if you won the lottery this weekend? But then just pay attention to the answer and ask yourself, fuck, is there anything really stopping me? Is there a simple step I could take? If that simple step's just talking to someone else, or, just whatever it is, and go take a look.
You're more likely to actually go and create that than to win the lottery.
There you go. So there you go, people. That wraps up another episode. As always, like, no matter what you do, you are brilliant. You're made of this stuff. Go forth and live into your brilliance.